The shuttle doors hissed open, revealing the grandeur of the Galarian court's main reception hall. Jason Carter stepped out, adjusting the collar of his formal suit, a stark contrast to the vibrant and diverse attire of the alien assembly gathered to greet him. Beside him, Commander Alex Reed, a fellow human and longtime friend, murmured, "Remember, Jason, every word counts today." Jason nodded, scanning the room filled with representatives from various star systems, all curious to see the newcomers. The walls glimmered with precious stones native to Galar, reflecting the light in colorful waves across the faces of the attendees. At the far end of the hall, Queen Serena awaited on a raised dais, her regal bearing unmistakable even from a distance. Her advisor, a tall, thin figure named Varric, stood by her side, whispering into her ear. As Jason and Alex approached, a Galarian herald announced, presenting the envoys from Earth, Jason Carter and Commander Alex Reed. Queen Serena's eyes locked onto Jason's, her expression unreadable. Jason bowed slightly, respecting the local customs. "Your Majesty, we are honored by your welcome," he said. "We come in peace, seeking mutual prosperity." Serena nodded, her voice carrying a melodic tone. "Earth has much to discuss with us. We are intrigued by your planet's culture and technology." Alex stepped forward, presenting a small device. "We've brought a token of our technology. This is a compact translator, designed to facilitate smoother communication between different species." Varric reached out to accept it, his gaze cautious but curious. "A thoughtful gift. We will examine its functions," he said, his voice echoing slightly in the vast hall. Jason smiled, hoping to ease the tension. "We hope it serves as a foundation for our discussions. We're particularly interested in exploring economic partnerships, specifically in mining ventures within your territories." The mention of mining shifted the atmosphere subtly. Murmurs rippled through the hall. Serena raised her hand for silence. "This is a matter of great importance to us. Galar values its resources highly, as they are central to our art and technology." Reed leaned in, whispering to Jason, "Tread carefully now." Aware of the growing scrutiny, Jason chose his next words with care. "Of course, Your Majesty. We propose an agreement that benefits both our civilizations, respecting Galarian sovereignty and providing economic opportunities for Earth." Serena paused, then smiled. "Your words reflect great thought, Envoy Carter. Let us discuss these matters in depth." She gestured to her guards. "Please, escort our guests to the council chamber. We shall begin shortly." As they walked toward the chamber, Alex nudged Jason. "Well handled, but keep your guard up. This is only the beginning." Jason nodded, feeling the weight of his mission. As the doors to the council chamber closed behind them, he knew that every step forward would shape the future relationship between Earth and the Galarian Federation. Chapter 2. The Queen's Secret. The council chamber was a masterpiece of Galarian architecture, its vaulted ceiling crisscrossed by beams of light emanating from unseen sources. Panels of shimmering material displayed historical records and star maps, as if the past and the cosmos were bound together in this one sacred space. Jason Carter sat at one end of the circular table, while Commander Alex Reed took the seat to his left, his military uniform crisp and spotless. Queen Serena presided over the room from her ornate chair opposite them, her advisor Varric standing at her shoulder. "Our trade policies are structured to ensure fair access to resources," Jason began, his tone measured. "We believe a cooperative agreement would bring prosperity to both our peoples." Serena raised an eyebrow, resting her chin on one elegant hand. "You make bold claims, Envoy Carter. But why should we trust a species as young and ambitious as yours?" Jason hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "Your Majesty, Earth's history has been defined by collaboration and innovation. Our growth comes not from conquest but from partnership." Alex leaned forward slightly, his voice calm but firm. "Our technological advancements and resource management techniques could enhance your own production capabilities. Together, we can achieve more than we could alone." Varric's sharp, analytical gaze flicked between the two humans. A tempting offer. But what guarantees do you bring? Words are easy to speak. Jason turned his full attention to Varric, meeting the alien's penetrating stare. We propose a detailed, transparent contract, overseen by independent observers. Your Majesty, we seek not to impose, but to cooperate as equal partners. The room was silent for a moment, the weight of diplomacy hanging in the air. Serena finally broke the quiet with a faint smile. You present a compelling case, Jason Carter. Yet, I sense there is more to your mission than mere economics. Her words caught Jason off guard. He glanced at Alex, who gave him a subtle nod. Your Majesty, Jason said carefully, we believe that trade is only the beginning. A foundation of mutual respect can lead to cultural exchange, shared learning, and greater understanding. Serena's expression softened, a flicker of curiosity crossing her face. Understanding, you say? You intrigue me, Envoy Carter. Perhaps our conversations should continue beyond this chamber. Varric turned his head slightly, clearly uneasy with the suggestion. Your Majesty, I would advise caution. They are still strangers to our ways. Jason seized the opportunity. We are eager to learn, Your Majesty. Let us prove our sincerity through action. Serena held his gaze for a moment longer before nodding. Very well. We shall see what humanity truly offers. I will meet with you privately tomorrow. The chamber's atmosphere shifted, tension easing slightly as the Queen rose from her seat. This session is adjourned. Varric, see to it that our guests are escorted to their quarters. As the humans followed their Galarian escort out of the chamber, Alex leaned toward Jason. You've got her interested, Jason. That's a good start. Now let's hope we can deliver. Jason glanced back at the council chamber's imposing doors as they closed behind them. He felt a mixture of relief and uncertainty. Winning Serena's interest was one thing. Earning her trust would be a far greater challenge. Chapter 3. The Forbidden Alliance. Jason Carter paced back and forth in his quarters, the faint hum of the Galarian station's systems in the background. Beside him, Commander Alex Reed sat on the edge of the low, curved couch, absently twirling a Galarian data rod between his fingers. You think she'll actually show? Alex asked, his tone skeptical. Seems risky for her to meet us in private. Her people might see it as a sign of weakness. Jason stopped pacing and looked at his friend. She will. Serena's no fool. She knows we're not just here to talk trade, and she's curious about us. About Earth. Alex raised an eyebrow. Curious enough to risk her position? I think she's more secure than we realize, Jason replied, glancing at the door. And besides, we're not here to undermine her. We want the same thing. A stable partnership. Alex exhaled sharply. Stable partnership, sure. As long as nobody tries to stab us in the back first. Before Jason could respond, the door panel chimed softly, and the outline of a figure appeared on the translucent display. Jason stepped forward, pressing his hand to the panel. The door slid open with a quiet hiss, revealing Queen Serena cloaked in a flowing, iridescent shawl. Her head tilted slightly as she took in the room's Spartan human decor. Your Majesty, Jason said with a respectful bow of his head. Jason, she replied, her voice calm but carrying an undertone of tension. Her gaze flicked to Alex. Commander Reed, I trust I'm not intruding. Alex stood, straightening his jacket. Not at all. Please, come in. Serena entered, the door sliding shut behind her. She stood in the center of the room, her regal bearing not diminished by the informal setting. I wanted to speak with you both away from the formalities of the council chamber. There are matters that must be discussed in confidence. Jason gestured for her to sit, but she remained standing. He exchanged a quick glance with Alex before stepping closer. What matters exactly? She hesitated, then looked directly at Jason. There are factions within my court that do not trust your kind. They believe humans are dangerous, unpredictable. They would rather see any negotiations fail than risk a partnership. Alex crossed his arms. Why would they think that? We haven't done anything to provoke them. It is not about what you have done, Serena explained. It is about what you represent, change. The very idea of an alliance with Earth challenges centuries of tradition. Some view it as a threat to Galarian sovereignty. Jason's brow furrowed. But you don't see it that way. Serena gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. I do not. However, I am only one voice. If I am to gain the support needed to move forward, I must show my people that humanity is not a threat. Jason stepped closer, his voice low and deliberate. What do you need from us? Serena's violet eyes locked onto his. Proof. Something tangible that demonstrates Earth's commitment to cooperation. But it must be done discreetly. If certain individuals in my court learn of this conversation, it could jeopardize everything. Alex's voice was firm but respectful. What kind of proof are we talking about? There is a restricted research facility on the edge of the Galarian homeworld, Serena said. It houses classified projects, some of which have been sabotaged recently. The culprits remain unknown, but many suspect human involvement. Jason frowned. That's absurd. We haven't even been in your territory long enough to— I know, Serena interrupted. But perception matters. If you can help us identify the true saboteurs, it would go a long way toward silencing my critics. And it would demonstrate that humans are capable of working alongside us, even in matters of trust and security. Jason exchanged a look with Alex, who nodded slightly. All right, Jason said. We'll do it. How do we get in? Serena's expression softened ever so slightly. I will provide you with access codes and a cover identity, but you must act quickly and quietly. If anyone finds out that I have enlisted your help, it could undermine everything we are trying to build. Jason nodded. Understood. We'll handle it. Serena stepped back toward the door but hesitated before it opened. She looked at Jason once more. Thank you, Jason. This means more than you realize. Before he could respond, she slipped out, leaving the two men in silence. Alex broke it first, letting out a low whistle. Well, that escalated quickly. Jason sat down heavily on the couch, rubbing his temples. Yeah, it's not exactly what I was expecting, but if it gets us closer to a partnership, we've got to try. Alex smirked faintly. Guess we're not just diplomats anymore. Welcome to the spy game. Jason shook his head. Let's just focus on the task. If we pull this off, it might be exactly what we need to turn things around. Chapter 4. Cultural Exchange. As the shuttle left the Galarian research station behind, Jason leaned back in his seat, trying to catch his breath. The tension from their mission still lingered, but at least they had succeeded. Alex sat beside him, scrolling through the collected data on his wristpad. That was close, Alex said, his voice low. Those security drones almost spotted us. Jason nodded, still replaying the operation in his mind. They'd slipped in, confirmed the true saboteurs were rogue Galarian factions, and extracted the evidence Serena needed. Now, they just had to get back to the station and let her handle the fallout. Yeah, Jason muttered. But we've got what she asked for. That's what matters. Alex glanced over at him, his expression lightening. At least now she owes us a favor. Jason smirked. I think she already owes us more than one. As the shuttle docked at the main station, they were met by Serena's personal attendant, a diminutive Galarian named Tharvis. Her Majesty requests your presence immediately, Tharvis said, his tone brisk but polite. Lead the way, Jason said. They were taken to a quieter section of the station, far from the council chambers and formal meeting rooms. Serena stood waiting in a private observation lounge, the vast panorama of the nebula casting a soft glow over the polished floor. She turned as they entered, her expression unreadable at first. You did well, she said, her voice warm but still carrying that regal edge. The evidence you retrieved is beyond value. Alex crossed his arms, his voice casual. We aim to please. Jason stepped forward. What happens now? Serena's gaze lingered on him for a moment before she replied. I will present this information to the council carefully. The traitors within my court will be dealt with discreetly, and the path forward for our alliance will be much clearer. Jason nodded. Good. We're glad we could help. Serina's expression softened just slightly. You have done more than help. You've shown a level of trust and cooperation that many in my court doubted was possible. Alex leaned against the wall, watching the exchange with a faint smirk. So, what's next? Do we just sit tight while you handle the politics? Serina hesitated before speaking. There is one other matter I wish to discuss. Your culture intrigues me. Your music, your art, your customs. I would like to learn more. Jason exchanged a glance with Alex, who raised an eyebrow. What exactly do you have in mind? Jason asked. Serina tilted her head, as if considering her words carefully. A cultural exchange. I will show you some of our most treasured traditions, and in return, you will teach me about Earth's heritage. Alex chuckled. Sounds like a diplomatic field trip. Jason smiled. I'd be honored, Your Majesty. I think we both have a lot to learn from each other. Serina nodded, a hint of a smile appearing. Good. Then we shall begin tomorrow. The next day, Jason and Alex were escorted to a secluded chamber deep within the station, where Serina awaited them. The room was lined with intricate tapestries, each depicting a scene from Galarian history. A low platform at the center held an array of strange, glowing instruments that hummed faintly. Serina gestured to the instruments. These are our harmonic resonators. They do not create music in the human sense, but rather tones that resonate with our emotions and thoughts. It is how we share feelings across distances, and how we preserve our most cherished memories. Jason leaned closer, fascinated. Amazing. So you don't just hear music, you feel it. Precisely, Serina said. And now I would like you to try. Alex stepped forward, examining the resonators. How does it work? Do we just touch them? Serina smiled faintly. It is not so simple. You must focus your thoughts on a memory or a strong emotion. The resonator will translate it into a harmonic tone. Jason glanced at Alex, then placed his hands gently on one of the instruments. He closed his eyes, thinking of a childhood memory. His mother humming a tune as she worked in their garden. The resonator responded, emitting a low, soothing hum that seemed to fill the room. Serina's expression softened. Beautiful. That is the sound of comfort. Alex took his turn next, recalling a moment of triumph from his early military days. The resonator emitted a strong, vibrant tone that reverberated through the chamber. Remarkable, Serina said. You see, our traditions and your emotions create a unique harmony. Jason nodded, smiling. Now it's our turn to show you something from Earth. He pulled a small tablet from his pocket and tapped the screen. A soft melody played, a piece of classical music from Earth. Serina tilted her head, listening intently. Her eyes closed briefly as the notes filled the room. This, she murmured. This is quite unlike our harmonics. It tells a story, does it not? Jason nodded. Every piece of music carries a story, of the composer's life, of the times they lived in, of the emotions they felt. Serina's eyes opened, meeting Jason's. I would like to hear more. And perhaps, she added, I could teach you how to create a harmony in the Galarian way. Alex smirked. Looks like we've got some cultural homework. Jason smiled back, feeling the distance between their species shrink just a little more. Sounds like a plan. Chapter 5, Touch of Understanding. Jason Carter leaned back against the rail of the observation deck, staring out at the sprawling starfield. The Galarian station glimmered faintly in the distance, its glowing towers blending with the sea of stars. Alex Reed stood beside him, his arms crossed, watching Jason with a mix of curiosity and concern. You've been quiet, Alex said, breaking the silence. What's on your mind? Jason let out a long breath, his gaze fixed on the horizon. Just everything. The mission, the negotiations, Serina. I keep thinking about how delicate all of this is. Alex chuckled softly. Delicate? Jason, we just helped an alien queen catch a bunch of traitors in her court. I'd say we're past delicate. Jason managed a faint smile. You know what I mean. This alliance is not just about politics. It's about trust. And trust isn't easy. Alex tilted his head, studying Jason for a moment. Is that all you're worried about? Trust. Jason hesitated, then nodded. It's complicated. Serena, she's different. Not what I expected. Different how? Alex asked, his tone careful. Jason shrugged, searching for the right words. She's curious, open-minded, and I think she genuinely wants to make this work. But there's something else. It's hard to explain. Alex's brow furrowed, his expression softening. You're starting to care about her. Jason didn't respond immediately. Instead, he leaned on the railing, his fingers curling around the cool metal. I don't know. Maybe. It's not something I planned. Before Alex could say more, a soft voice interrupted. Jason, Commander Reed. They turned to see Queen Serena standing at the entrance to the observation deck. She looked different out of her formal regalia. Her robes were simpler, her demeanor more relaxed. The soft glow of the nearby stars reflected in her eyes. Your Majesty, Jason said, straightening. Serena smiled faintly. Please call me Serena. There's no need for titles here. Jason exchanged a quick glance with Alex, who shrugged slightly and took a step back, giving them some space. What brings you here? Jason asked, his voice steady but curious. I came to speak with you, Serena said, moving closer. I've been thinking about everything that's happened. The alliance, the cultural exchanges, the risks we've taken together. And I realized something. Jason felt his pulse quicken slightly. What's that? Serena hesitated, as if searching for the right words. You and I, we've worked together to achieve something neither of our people thought possible. But more than that, I've come to appreciate your perspective. The way you see the world, so different from my own. Jason nodded slowly. I've learned a lot from you too. Your culture, your traditions. They're fascinating. And I think we've both shown that even if Wreath, as the two stood together, the weight of their shared experiences hanging between them. Serena, Jason said quietly, I feel the same. Working with you, seeing the kind of leader you are, it's changed the way I see all of this. And maybe the way I see you. She took a step closer, her gaze meeting his. Perhaps it's time we stop seeing ourselves as simply envoys and allies. Perhaps we can be more. Jason's heart raced. He reached out, his hand hesitating before lightly brushing against hers. The touch was brief, tentative, but it carried a world of meaning. Maybe we can, he murmured. Serena's lips curved into a small smile. Then let us see where this new path takes us. As their hands lingered, Alex's voice broke the moment. Hate to interrupt, but we should probably head back. Don't want to keep the council waiting. Serena withdrew her hand, the faintest trace of a blush coloring her cheeks. Of course, there is still much to be done. Jason nodded, his gaze lingering on hers for a moment longer. We'll continue this later. Serena inclined her head, a hint of warmth in her expression. Yes, later. As they turned to leave the observation deck, Jason felt a new sense of connection, one that went beyond alliances or cultural exchanges. For the first time, he allowed himself to wonder where this relationship might lead, and whether they could truly bridge the gap between their worlds. Chapter 6. Betrayal Unveiled. The council chamber was packed. Rows of Galarian officials lined the circular room, their elongated, shimmering forms a sea of tense anticipation. Jason and Alex stood together near the center, the data rod from their mission secured in Jason's hand. Across the chamber, Serena took her place on the elevated platform. Her presence was commanding, yet Jason noticed the faintest trace of worry in her expression. We've got everything we need, Alex whispered to Jason. This will expose the traitors and clear humanity's name. Jason nodded. Let's just hope it goes as smoothly as we planned. Serena's voice rang out, calm but authoritative. Esteemed members of the council, we are gathered today to address a matter of critical importance. Evidence has come to light concerning recent acts of sabotage within our research facilities. The chamber fell silent. All eyes turned to Jason as he stepped forward. Ladies and gentlemen, Jason began, his tone steady. Over the last few days, Commander Reed and I conducted an investigation into these incidents. With Her Majesty's permission, we accessed classified sections of the facility and identified the true perpetrators. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. One of the counselors, an older Galarian named Varlon, raised a hand. You claim to have evidence. Show it. Jason nodded and held up the data rod. What we found was undeniable. These acts of sabotage weren't committed by humans, as some have suggested. They were orchestrated by a faction within your own ranks, seeking to disrupt any progress between Earth and the Galarian Federation. Another counselor scoffed. Why should we trust the word of an outsider? Jason's gaze hardened. Because it's not just my word. The data logs we recovered include footage, access codes, and internal communications. This isn't speculation. It's proof. Varlon narrowed his eyes. If this evidence is genuine, why did you wait until now to present it? Alex stepped in. We wanted to ensure it was irrefutable before coming forward. The consequences of false accusations would be far worse. Serena raised a hand, silencing further questions. Let the evidence speak for itself. Play the recordings. Jason inserted the rod into a console. The chamber's central display flared to life, showing grainy but unmistakable footage of several Galarian officials tampering with research equipment. Audio logs followed, urgent whispers and secretive plans. The murmurs in the chamber grew louder, many counselors casting accusatory glances at their peers. Varlon's face tightened. This cannot be true. Serena's eyes fixed on him. And yet, there it is. The truth. These traitors sought to fracture our trust with Earth, to keep us isolated out of fear and suspicion. Another counselor, a younger Galarian named Orcs, stood abruptly. This cannot stand. Those responsible must be removed from their positions immediately. The chamber erupted in overlapping voices, some shouting for justice, others demanding further investigation. Serena remained poised, waiting until the chaos began to die down. We will not rush to judgment, she said firmly. There will be a full inquiry. But let it be known that these actions, these lies, were not the work of Earth's envoys. Humanity has proven its willingness to work with us, not against us. Jason took a step back, feeling the weight of the moment. Alex placed a hand on his shoulder. Looks like they're starting to listen. Finally, Jason muttered. But it's not over yet. As the chamber slowly came back to order, Varlon stood again, his voice trembling. If this is true, it changes everything. But it also raises questions. Who else might be involved? How deep does this treachery go? Serena nodded, her expression serious. Those questions will be answered. For now, we must focus on the evidence before us. She turned her gaze to Jason and Alex. And we must acknowledge the efforts of those who brought this truth to light. Jason inclined his head. We just did what needed to be done. Alex smirked. And maybe you'll start to see humans as more than just troublemakers. A faint smile touched Serena's lips, though her eyes remained thoughtful. Perhaps. As the council session came to a close, Jason and Alex left the chamber together, their steps light but their minds still racing. You know, Alex said, breaking the silence. For a moment there, I thought it was all going to fall apart. Jason sighed. Me too. But now we've got a chance. Maybe a real chance to build something better. Alex grinned. Just another day of saving the galaxy, huh? Jason couldn't help but chuckle. Yeah, just another day. Chapter 7. A Future Together? The muted hum of the Galarian station filled the quiet room. Jason sat at a sleek metal table, staring down at a steaming cup of an alien herbal brew Serena had recommended. Across from him, Alex fiddled with a small device, trying to recalibrate a translation unit that had been acting up. Jason sighed, running a hand through his hair. It's finally settling in, isn't it? Alex glanced up, his eyebrows raised. What's that? Jason motioned vaguely toward the walls. This whole thing. Everything we've been through, Serena, the Council, the Alliance. It's been a whirlwind. And now that it's wrapping up, it's starting to feel real. Alex smirked. You mean you're realizing we might actually pull this off? Jason chuckled. Something like that. Their conversation was interrupted by a soft chime. The door slid open, and Serena stepped inside, her flowing robes replaced by a simpler outfit. She looked more relaxed than Jason had ever seen her, though her expression was still thoughtful. Serena, Jason said, standing out of respect. What brings you here? Serena motioned for him to sit. I wanted to speak with you. Both of you. Alex straightened, setting the translation unit aside. What's on your mind? Serena moved to the chair next to Jason, sitting gracefully. The council has accepted the evidence. The traitors are being removed quietly, and the path for the alliance is clear. I should feel relieved. But, Jason leaned forward. But what? She hesitated, folding her hands on the table. I'm unsure what comes next. For me, for Gaylor, for you. Our worlds are still so far apart. Yet I've come to appreciate the connections we've made. Alex exchanged a glance with Jason, then leaned back in his chair. Sounds like you've got something more personal on your mind. Jason gave Alex a quick look, but Serena didn't seem fazed. Instead, she smiled faintly. You're perceptive, Commander Reed. It is personal. I've grown accustomed to having both of you hear your insight, your perspective. It has been unexpectedly refreshing. Jason's heart skipped a beat. He glanced at Alex, who gave a subtle nod, as if to say, your turn. Serena, Jason began, choosing his words carefully. I've felt the same. This entire mission has been about building trust, about finding common ground. And through it, I've come to see you not just as a queen, but as someone I respect deeply. Serena's gaze softened, her usual regal demeanor giving way to something more open, more vulnerable. Respect. It's mutual, Jason. And perhaps more than that. Alex coughed lightly, breaking the moment. Sounds like you two have some stuff to talk about. I'll, check on the translator. Jason shot Alex a grateful look as his friend left the room. When he turned back, Serena was studying him carefully. You and Commander Reed are close, she said, her tone curious. You trust him implicitly. I do, Jason said. He's been with me through thick and thin. We make a good team. Serena nodded slowly. It must be comforting to have that kind of support. In my position, trust is often in short supply. Jason hesitated. You've trusted me, though, despite the risks. She smiled faintly. Yes, I have. For a moment, they simply sat in silence. Jason could feel the weight of everything unspoken in the room, but he wasn't sure how to break it. Finally, Serena reached across the table, her hand brushing his. The touch was light, tentative, but it sent a surge of warmth through him. Jason, she said quietly, when you return to Earth, what will happen to us? He looked down at her hand, still resting on his. I don't know. I'll do everything I can to keep this alliance alive, to keep working with you. But it won't be easy. Serena nodded, her expression somber. Our worlds are still divided by distance and culture. But perhaps we can find a way. Jason met her eyes. I'd like that. Her smile widened slightly, though it didn't erase the worry in her gaze. So would I. Before Jason could respond, the door slid open again. Alex stepped in, holding the recalibrated device. I think I've got it working, ready to test it out. Jason pulled his hand back, clearing his throat. Yeah, let's see if it's functioning properly. Serena rose from her seat, her expression composed once more. I'll leave you to your work. But, Jason, thank you. He nodded, watching as she left the room. When the door closed behind her, Alex leaned on the table, raising an eyebrow. Something going on there, Carter? Alex asked, a sly grin on his face. Jason shook his head, but he couldn't hide the faint smile tugging at his lips. You know me, Alex. Just doing my job. Alex laughed. Sure you are. Jason's smile faded slightly as he turned his attention back to the translator. But he couldn't stop thinking about what Serena had said. Their connection, fragile as it was, had grown stronger than he'd ever expected. Now, he had to figure out how to make sure it didn't break, no matter what came next. Chapter 8, New Beginnings. Jason stood on the observation deck of the Galarian station, gazing out at the swirling nebula beyond. Alex Reed joined him, setting down a small metallic case filled with what looked like Earth trinkets, pens, a few small flags, a datapad loaded with human literature. "Well, Jason, looks like it's all wrapping up," Alex said, his voice a mix of relief and uncertainty. Jason nodded, not taking his eyes off the view. "Yeah, it feels weird. It's hard to believe everything that's happened here. I came to negotiate trade agreements, not unravel a conspiracy or—" He stopped, as if considering his words carefully. "Not what?" Alex asked, crossing his arms and leaning on the railing beside him. Jason exhaled and finally turned to look at his friend. "Not connect with their queen the way I did. I didn't expect her to trust us, let alone this." Alex chuckled softly. "You didn't expect to find yourself caring for her." Jason gave him a look but didn't argue. "Yeah, something like that." Alex smirked, then motioned toward the elevator doors at the end of the corridor. "Speaking of which, you've got company." Jason turned to see Serena approaching. She wasn't wearing her ceremonial robes. Instead, she had donned something simpler, though still elegant. An outfit that looked more personal, less formal. Her expression was calm but searching as she came to stand beside them. "Jason," she said softly. "Commander Reed." "Your Majesty," Alex replied with a respectful nod. "I'll give you two a moment." He gave Jason a quick pat on the back, then walked off down the corridor, leaving the two of them alone. "Serena," Jason said, turning to her fully. "What brings you up here?" She stepped closer to the railing, her gaze shifting to the nebula outside. "I wanted to see you before you left." Jason's chest tightened slightly. "I was going to stop by before we departed." She smiled faintly. "I know, but I preferred to find you here, where we can speak more freely." For a moment, neither said anything. The soft hum of the station filled the space as they both stared out at the stars. "Jason," Serena began, her voice quiet, "our alliance is secure now. Thanks to you and Commander Reed, the Council has embraced a future with Earth. The traitors have been removed, and we've set a path forward that could benefit both our peoples for generations." "That's good to hear," Jason said. "It's what we wanted." She turned to face him. "But it's not just the alliance I'm thinking about. It's what comes after. For us." Jason hesitated. "I've been thinking about that too." Serena tilted her head slightly, studying his face. "What will happen to us, Jason? Will we become just a memory of a successful negotiation? Or is there something more?" Jason took a step closer, his voice steady but warm. "There's definitely something more. I don't know how we'll manage the distance, the differences, but I want to try." She smiled, a hint of relief in her expression. "So do I." Jason reached out, lightly touching her hand. She didn't pull away. Instead, she moved a little closer, her gaze holding his. "You'll be returning to Earth soon, but if you wish to remain connected, I will make it possible." Jason felt a wave of gratitude and something deeper, hope, perhaps. "Thank you, Serena. I'll make sure we stay in touch. And when we can, I'll come back." Her smile widened. "I would like that." They stood there a moment longer, the starfield stretching endlessly before them. When she finally stepped back, her posture was still regal, but her eyes were filled with warmth. "Farewell, Jason Carter. Until we meet again." "Until we meet again," Jason replied, his voice soft. As she turned and walked away, Jason leaned against the railing, letting the moment sink in. Alex returned a few minutes later, his hands in his pockets. "Everything good?" Alex asked. Jason nodded. "Yeah, everything's good." Alex gave him a knowing smile. "Well, I've got everything packed, ready to head back." Jason pushed off the railing and stood tall. "Let's do it." As they made their way to the docking bay, Jason glanced back once, seeing Serena's figure disappear down a corridor. He didn't know exactly what the future held, but he knew one thing for sure. He'd find his way back to her.